Hello and welcome to the Pages to Pixels podcast, where we talk about new movies every week. I'm Rohan, and today we have a special guest joining us. We have Jaya Armstead. She's a screenwriter, and we actually met in film school. She's worked in Fox Sports. And Jaya, actually, why don't you tell everyone what else you've been up to, other than Morning Luca, of course.
Oh, yeah, you had to bring that up. But I currently work in entertainment on the publicity side, but I am truly a writer. So I have written fantasy projects, directed fantasy projects that's won in different competitions, and I've also written different features and television scripts. So definitely out there fighting the entertainment world and finding my way in there. But yeah.
Yeah, I heard that a couple of your scripts have been placing well in competition, so congratulations to that.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for joining so that we can talk about Captain America, Brave New World together. Um, so real quick, before we get into this movie specifically, I want to just get your thoughts on kind of the MCU in general, and then maybe more specific, the Captain America movies, and maybe even Falcon and the Winter Soldier if you've seen that.
Yeah. Definitely I feel like the MCU right now is like in a whole different footing. And it's not saying that definitely there are areas where I'm like, ooh, it is definitely lacking, but there's a lot of potential that I see in this new era that's coming and a lot of different characters that are going to get their shine. As a big X-Men fan, I'm really excited for them to find their way into the MCU. But
Oh,
I
me too.
do see where they're having a hard time, like smoothing in where it's been such a Avenger heavy cloud. But I think they're gonna wiggle their way through, and definitely the Fantastic Four looks really exciting. And seeing their trailer before Captain
Mhm.
America, it was like, okay, I'm ready to see this in theaters. But I definitely think that the MCU is like finding their pacing, and some of the shows I feel like really give it some lift. Like Loki, for sure, that's one of my favorites. And I'm excited for Daredevil dropping next week. So we'll see how
Oh,
that
is it next
goes.
week? I didn't
I
even
think
realize that.
week after next, but definitely March 4th. I saw it on
Okay.
flyers today and rewatched the trailer, so I'm ready to go.
Yeah, really excited for that. Yeah, I'm like kind of in the middle with MCU. Some of their projects I love, some of them I don't really like. I tend to prefer the ones that I feel do something a little bit um different. I think I enjoyed the Guardians of the Galaxy series. Um, I like I mean I really loved the first Black Panther. I think the second one was a step down, but it's not a bad movie per se. I just feel that watching that I can feel Ryan Coogler's influence on it.
Hmm.
Um, and I actually really enjoyed Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which is kind of takes place right before Brave New World. I mean, it's not perfect, but I think it's a solid foundation going into Brave New World, and I was really excited for it. And yeah, so
Yeah.
the IMDb logline for Brave New World, it reads Sam Wilson, the new Captain America, finds himself in the middle of an international incident and must discover the motive behind a nefarious global plan. Um, so, so I mean, before we kind of jump into spoilers, let's get some non-spoiler stuff. Uh,
Hmm.
let's get your non-spoiler thoughts. Like, what did you like about it? What did you not like about it?
Non-spoiler, for my likes, I will say I love the work of Anthony Mackie.
I agree.
I thought it was like one of his best performances where I was like, okay, you did convince me, which he did in the series Falcon and the Winter Soldier, like you're Captain America. But this time it was like you're taking on the leadership that comes with it. And it just really just resonated heavier for me. And seeing his emotional moments and like the cool action too. Like now that Captain America's flying, it was like, oh snap, this is like really cool in the air. But he definitely was really strong for me. Isaiah Bradley's character literally was crying for
It
him
was
like
great.
in different scenes. He was great. Harrison Ford, I thought he had very strong emotional moments, but there were moments where I was like, am I really caught up in this? Because possibly the story which hopefully is not too much of a spoiler. But
Yeah, I
yeah, it was teetering the line.
I felt that I kind of agree with you. I think all the performances were great. I do feel that some of the characters are let down a bit by the script,
Mm-hmm.
and you can feel, in particular, Harrison Ford playing Thunderbolt Ross. I thought Harrison Ford was great in the
Yeah.
movie, but I don't think his character is that well written. I think they're going for an arc where they establish him as, hey, not a good guy, but he's trying to be better. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so you're supposed to feel a little conflicted, and I think Harrison Ford does a great job at selling
Yeah.
that. Uh, I just have some issues with the way it's written.
And I think you're making a great point with that because I feel like it was banking on the fans that were there in '08 with The Incredible Hulk, where it's like you remember the angriness of Thunderbolt Ross and whatnot, but like more MCU entered fans, it's like you don't know how crazy this man once was and like why it might be kind of skeptical to like believe his transition that he's actually a good
Yeah.
guy and like things like that. Where I definitely feel like I wish the film had like established that more than what they did. I hope
Yeah.
it's not too much of a spoiler, but like it was something that did bother me where I was like, oh, this could have been really good if we had like set this up a little more for everyone.
I agree. I think the movie kind of constantly, because it starts out and he's the new president of the United States.
Mm-hmm.
That's literally the very first scene, so it's not really a spoiler. Um, but the movie kind of constantly tells you, hey, he's a bad guy. Maybe you shouldn't trust him. But you don't necessarily, and you see some of the shady, morally gray area stuff, but you don't necessarily see him as almost a villain the way that uh, Isaiah and Sam are discussing him in the beginning of the movie. Um,
Right.
it also does feel a little odd because I know Sam's interacted with him a little bit in Civil War, but I don't. You don't see much interaction with those two characters. If it was Banner and going like Bruce Banner was in this movie, which I think he should
Mm-hmm.
have been, um, and he's like, "Hey man, this guy's bad news." I think there is a different level of weight to it because Banner has seen that firsthand.
Yeah. Ah, he would have been so good in this film.
Yeah, in many ways, it actually does feel almost like a sequel to The Incredible Hulk as opposed to
Mm-hmm.
a Captain America movie, even though the Hulk is not in this movie.
No, right. Because I was also thinking how, like, with the show being in place, that's where we did get that moment of like Sam becoming Captain America, where it was like, here, it was like, okay, he had that journey. So, what is this journey is going to be? Is it just another mission or something that's going to put us in a different stage for him? That's something that I was kind of like sitting there, like thinking about it later once I was reflecting, like, was this just a moment for him or was this his actual moment of like feeling like Captain America?
Yeah, it did feel a little bit like a repeated beat for me.
Yeah.
And in my opinion, I think the show actually um handles it better. But I understand why they felt the need to kind of do that again because they're probably thinking maybe not everybody watched the show compared to I don't know, maybe they're like, hey, only 30% of the viewers who go to this movie are probably have seen the show. So we may have to touch upon some of that character arc again.
No, very true. Because I know my mom included did not watch the show but wants to see the movie. So definitely a great point. I guess my non-spoiler take of things that I dislike, I would say certain moments of pacing and where I kind of felt out of the movie where I'm like, with social media and like life, we learn too much about films that they're being created. So I could feel a moment of like, did y'all have to reshoot this? Or like, was this chopped up because of reshoots? And it kind of took me out of it where I'm like, okay, this messed up the story flow where things could have been like placed better or been smoother. So I hope without spoiling, like, which we can dive into later, where I'm like, oh, I wish this was smoother because this could have been like a little more something in this scene.
I'm actually really glad you brought up the reshoots, because apparently there was a lot. Now, it's not uncommon for Marvel movies or even big studio movies to have it. I know the MCU for every single movie, they actually have reshoots planned. Um, like even when the script is being written, it's like this is when the script's gonna be completed. We'll do principal photography, and then these few weeks we're gonna be doing reshoots. Apparently, this movie had significant reshoots. The Giancarlo Esposito character was entirely added during reshoots. At least that's what some of the reports say. I mean, you're adding a significant character and actor to that.
Uh-huh.
And it does feel a little disjointed. I don't know, because, I mean, I love him as an actor, but I feel like you could cut his character out and the movie is exactly the same.
Completely agree. Completely agree. Like, he was great in the scenes that he was in, but to progress the story, I was like, that you could have used anyone. Like, it was felt very disposable. So, like, what made his character, like, had to be here?
Yeah, it also did feel like a bit of a waste of someone like him. I mean, there was a lot of talk of like, is he going to be the next Magneto? And everyone was excited. And then I don't even remember the name of his character because he just feels like.
The Serpent King.
All right, shall we go into spoilers now?
Let's do it.
Okay. So yeah, this movie really gets kicked off with where there's an assassination attempt on the president, and this is one of the things that doesn't work for me because there's the assassination attempt, and then uh, Isaiah goes to prison, and then there's a whole peace treaty with India a little bit, but more than that, it's Japan. They really need to get Japan on board, otherwise war is going to break out over adamantium. I don't know. It was a little bit muddled, and that's kind of where I think the story should have been more streamlined. I think that maybe it would have almost worked better if they didn't have the peace treaty thing, and the focus was Sam Wilson trying to clear Isaiah Bradley's name.
A little more focused, less little muddled with that. And
Yeah.
like, even with the peace treaty as well, just, I think it was too highlighted much where they could have even kept it simple where they were just fighting over adamantium, but maybe it was just too close to when they were fighting over vibranium in Black Panther. But I kind of just felt like, as you like, okay, we need to focus on one thing and let the rest kind of branch off that one thing. Yeah.
I almost wish that the Wakandans were in this movie a little bit more. Or not, they would be in this movie, not more. I mean, they're referenced, they're name dropped, hey, he got this armor from the Wakandans. But it's just, I think it makes sense because they introduce adamantium and they say that, hey, this is even better than vibranium. And I think that is an area where you could have a lot of commentary where the US wants to be a superpower, and they know that at the end of the day, because the Wakandans have all this vibranium, they are richer and more technologically advanced. So maybe the US sees this as an opportunity to, hey, let's get that adamantium, and then we will be a superpower. It'll be better than anything the Wakandans have. And there could be a source of conflict right there. Instead, they chose Japan, which it was weird also because the Celestial is in the Indian Ocean, and if you look at a map, Japan has to like leapfrog a bunch of countries to even get to the Indian Ocean.
Should have been flagged right away.
Yeah, surprised nobody had that note.
No, yeah. Now that you made that point, like, definitely should have been flagged right away. Like, yeah, no. Even with the Celestial being, it was more looking at that. I'm glad they acknowledged it because it had been like a funny running on joke, like,
oh yeah,
so this big old thing is in the ocean and no one's going to talk about it. But I also kind of was like, all right, because the adamantium and whatnot, are we just making it up that it came from this, or like do we have like a basing for this? Where it also kind of bothered me too, where I guess since I am a big Wolverine fan, where I'm like, okay, I take this metal very seriously, so I want to make sure like it comes from an organic spot that y'all making this, but I get they're making it work for the MCU.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll see how that goes. But
Yeah, because I believe in the comics, it's, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's an alloy of vibranium, correct?
mm-hmm.
So I believe it's also not like necessarily stronger. I mean, from my understanding, it's if you want to cut through something, adamantium is better. But if you want to, I mean, hence Wolverine's claws. But if you want to block something, vibranium is better. Hence Captain America's shield.
Mm-hmm. Because I'm like, it's definitely they're like neck and neck with each other.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's a little, yeah, it is a little odd that now they're just coming out with adamantium. They're like, it's better. I think I also want to talk about Thunderbolt Ross a little bit. We both mentioned that Harrison Ford was great. His storyline is a little odd, and I think all of it comes down to him wanting to make amends with his daughter.
Mm-hmm.
Her name's Becky?
Betty Ross.
Betty Ross, yeah. I was close. But yeah, played by Liv Tyler in the original Incredible Hulk, and then she does cameo at the very end of this movie. Although I don't know if it was actually her. Her face did look a little wonky.
I thought I was the only one, but I was like, maybe I'm just staring at this too hard. But
Oh no,
I'm gonna hope it's her. But like,
it's a big theory online. Actually, everyone's
Yeah.
saying like, oh no, that's like an AI version of her.
yeah.
They paid her some money.
Oh gosh.
She didn't have to show up on set. They're just like, hey, show up to the premiere, and yeah.
But no, with Thunderbolt Ross, it made me think about when we were in grad school, and they always say like, don't rely on a bunch of flashbacks to tell your story. And I kind of felt like they were relying on the flashbacks of Thunderbolt to like get his character across.
Yeah.
And I just felt like, I don't know, his sincerity was definitely felt, but something about it didn't feel earned. Where I also feel conflicted, which they had to reveal his Red Hulk in the trailers early because I felt that they had to bring people to the theaters to see the movie.
Yeah, they should not have done that.
Yeah, and they shouldn't have done that because that reveal would have been so refreshing and so like earned in that moment. But
Yeah,
I'm like,
I
I
mean,
get why they did it. But
yeah, they play it as a big like plot twist. But everyone, including me, I was just like, when are we gonna get to Red Hulk? That's when are we gonna get to it?
no, yeah.
And then it's like it's just at the very end. So, and I think that I'm okay with movies kind of showing flashes of stuff if it's out of context, or if he had appeared early in the movie. I mean, just to spoil something that happens in late into the third act of the movie, it just didn't make sense to me. Other than, of course, I mean, you said it. They know that, hey, Red Hulk's in this movie. Okay, more people are gonna come to watch it.
Yeah, I will say they did surprise me with the Gamma, big spoiler, being in his pills.
Yeah.
I think that's what got me. At first, I was like trying to think ahead, like, oh, it's containing it, make him calm down. And I was like, oh, shoot, he was slipping that in him. He had no clue. So that definitely did was like a little twist for me. I was like, okay, y'all were like slick with that.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the one thing I liked about the villain's plan.
The leader.
The leader. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I don't think his plan was all that great. The movie tells you, oh, he's like a super smart guy, and he's so smart that he can't officially see the future, but he can practically see it because he just knows all the predictions to make and the probabilities. And this is an issue that I have with movies is when they tell me a character is smart versus showing me that a character is smart. Because he didn't feel that smart. I mean, his plan was just like, hey, let's make him angry and then expose him as Red Hulk. I just think there was a lot that he could have exposed
Yeah.
way
Now,
earlier.
definitely, it's like in the comics, you can tell the leader is definitely more grand compared to like what the film showed, and definitely looks much better because the film, I was like, this does not look good. And I know
Yeah.
he's not supposed to look good, but I was like, he does not like look good to like not look good and whatnot. And just like you said, you can't tell me someone's smart. Prove it to me. Even though for he can see different instances, I think Doctor Strange was more successful when he was able to see every instance in Infinity War.
Yeah.
Where I was like, okay, I'm convinced that he saw it. Even just the movement, the way he acted, and just like the betrayal of it, I was like, okay, I'm
Yeah, I think
convinced.
that
I
made
believe it. Yeah, and this time I was like, you're just saying that. Can you really like think of all that?
yeah, and I think a lot of his scenes were actually I don't know if he and Anthony Mackie were on set for most of those scenes because it was a
Mm-hmm.
very reverse shot, pretty static, which I will say, I think one of the things I did appreciate about this movie is not all of it, but I liked some of the camera movement in not necessarily the action scenes. They tend to always have that. But in the dialogue scenes, I mean, I remember the opening scene with when Ross has been Ross is doing his was his inauguration speech. It's just I like the way that the camera tracked that character. It's something you don't really see. The MCU has been um has been known and or has been criticized for shooting in a very flat style. I think that a lot of the scenes this time around there where they're trying to separate themselves, they're trying to emulate um, the political thrillers uh, that whether I mean even the Harrison Ford ones, uh, they're trying to emulate all those like I believe like the Fugitive stuff like that, and I liked it.
Yeah.
Even the score, I actually I actually really enjoyed the score this time around.
Oh yeah, it's definitely like a fun espionage story. Like they knew people kind of wanted that feel again. There's something like classic about hand-to-hand combat, fighting spies and keeping it cool. Where definitely I think Winter Soldier is one of my favorite Captain America movie, probably my number one Captain America movie. But definitely having that moment of like, do we trust the government that we're working for? We got to fight back. Who's doing what? Where I think they wanted that feeling, but definitely could have been executed better.
I think there was times where I had an issue with this like lack of or just all the characters acting very vague. Um,
It's a real good point.
yeah, like Sam going with the whole Isaiah thing being mind controlled. He's like, oh
Mhm.
yeah, you know, I knew a guy that it happened to. I'm like, just say Bucky, and then
Yeah.
also make that argument
Right.
because that clearly happened to Bucky, and he at no point does he make an argument to someone in official power like Ross, who he's speaking with face to face. He doesn't go, "Hey, we saw this with Bucky. He was mind controlled with a specific set of trigger words, and now he's running for Congress for some reason." Uh,
Oh gosh.
which
But
he's
no,
gonna, yeah, he's
no
gonna lose
good.
that election, right? If he's gonna be in the
I
Thunderbolts.
I believe so, and I feel like that's going to be a big kind of thing in that movie, which I'm excited to see how this
Yeah,
plays out. But no, yeah, I agree with you. It was like moments of being vague where they didn't have to do it,
yeah.
where it's like, give us that hard conversation. We want to hear it, and I get they want us to be like, ooh, he's hinting about so and so, and I'm like, I think the MCU and the fans are at the point where we can just be blunt,
Yeah.
say who we're talking about, and we're ready to catch on and be right with it.
Yeah, it just feels more realistic.
Yeah.
Uh, especially I can understand that in the Netflix Daredevil, there was a scene where a character says the big green guy. But that person has no personal attachment to the Hulk. Sam Wilson does. He knows Bucky personally, so I don't get why he doesn't just say his name.
No, yeah, definitely. I don't get that either. And there's certain other characters where they were just, I don't know, being vague, or like they sometimes kind of felt flat. Or like you can show a little more emotion, or like kind of get swept up in the scene a bit. And
Yeah.
I felt that in like the scenes where it was Harrison and like his cabinet, oh, President Thunderbolt and like his cabinet sometimes, where the surrounding characters felt very like surface level, where I'm like, show more emotion to the stake of the situation, where I felt like the president is feeling more emotional than everyone else in the room. Standout element for me is, I guess, like in a way, like the messaging and how things were the tone. Like, I feel like, not to get too much into the world, but Anthony Mackie's Captain America, Sam Wilson's Captain America is very important right now, and like the things that he represents. And I thought it was a great scene between him and Danny Ramirez characters at the very end in the hospital, just having that moment where he could just be emotional about being Captain America and the stakes that it means for him, that he cannot not be perfect, because if he's not perfect and it represents a whole group of people and whatnot. And like, I don't know, I felt that throughout the movie, which gave me like a hope while watching the movie. Like, I feel hopeful because, like, one, he's a black man, I'm a black woman. It's cool to see that representation, that hero for me. And then also the fact of like, he has no serum in him. He is just a regular man out here fighting. And so any moment he got stabbed, I was like, goodness gracious, I would be laid out and begging for help. But he's like on it and sticking to it. So I definitely resonated heavily with that, and especially Isaiah Bradley's character, where I feel like he just spoke volumes of like being incarcerated and just already to blame, and just also having that mentality of once you're locked up again and just snapping back. Like, I definitely resonated heavy, like listening to his character, watching his character, and feeling for that. And I don't know, I just really wish the film had just dove into these emotional moments and continued that tone, because it would have definitely like boosted a lot of different things. But when they did dive into it, I felt like they were cooking with something. Just keep going.
Yeah, I think that's similar to what stood out to me. I had kind of wished that they leaned into the politics more almost.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this movie is billed as a political thriller. Um, but everything just feels so vague that it doesn't. It's kind of what you said. There felt like a missed opportunity. Um, they, I think they didn't hesitate to discuss race and like the tensions of him being a black Captain America. Um, in the show, Falcon Winter Soldier, but they really pulled back
Yeah.
in this movie. It's not really something that's discussed, and I'm not even saying, hey, to get rid of subtlety, but I feel like there's subtlety, and then there's almost like a fear of backlash, and as a result, it did feel like Disney kind of saying like, hey, let's not do that, and let's pull back a little bit. Um, I mean, for a movie that has the word brave in the title, it didn't feel like a very brave movie.
No, yeah.
And similar to, I think, even when it comes to examining the the president and him being morally gray, it just, again, it's everything just felt very vague. You don't really, and he mentions like, oh, I'm proud of you for taking accountability at the end. but there's just something lacking. You just don't necessarily feel it.
Yeah.
Um, I think one of the scenes that really sticks out to me is when they're in the limo, and I think the Danny Ramirez character, who I liked quite a bit. I think he was a lot of fun, and I do want to see more of him. But I think he even goes like, "Oh yeah, who cares if Ross is an asshole? It's like we're going to the White House in a limo." Um, and then everyone's just like drinking and celebrating. And I think that there is that could have been a moment that is used as like moral, um, like kind of a conundrum that Sam or Isaiah could have. I don't expect Danny because I think his character is supposed to be a little bit
Yeah.
immature, but Sam or Isaiah could have. That's a moment where is he doing this? Is he sending us a limo just to buy our I don't know about affection, but loyalty, something like that. Oh.
No, I definitely agree with that because I feel like at first Isaiah's character definitely was the one questioning a lot of
Yep.
things, like being invited at first and different things where I think they could have continued it when they got in the limo and in the White House.
Yeah.
But I do see where he kind of eased up because of his trust in Sam and knowing how much he cared for him and this meant for him to be there. But I definitely agree just having that one, even on both sides, just an extreme character on both ends that like really adds on to the discussion and the debate where
Yeah.
like Sam's character really can be in the middle and be like the gray area.
Yeah. I also think that they could have done a little bit more with showing. They talk a little bit about the difference between Sam and Steve Rogers. But I don't think they showed it enough. I think one of the things I really enjoyed about Falcon and Winter Soldier is you see kind of just his life outside of being an Avenger.
Mm-hmm.
And, Steve Rogers never really had that other than until after Endgame, because it was, he grew up, he got the serum, fought in World War II, and then got frozen. And then he wakes up and he's an Avenger. Sam Wilson, you do have that. He has been through life as an actual human being, and I think those are my favorite parts. I mean, I remember there's an awesome scene in Falcon and the Winter Soldier where he goes for a home loan and he's not approved because he didn't have credit history for like the past 5 years, and he's like, "Well, what am I gonna do?" uh, and stuff like that. That I think I was hoping that this movie would lean into, to hit the difference between Sam and Steve, and I don't think that. Again, I think it was just very vague. Where, Bucky goes, Steve was a symbol of hope. You're someone that they can aspire to.
Right.
I think it's a cool line. Like they said, it was your speechwriter, the one who did that. But then it's like, I don't know how much it means when we haven't really been shown it.
That's true. And then, yeah, because it also makes me think too, where I feel like they could have played on with kind of Sam's Captain America dealing with is the Sokovia Accords and how, like, now that that's in effect, how that changes the whole prospect just being a hero in general.
Yeah.
Like that, kept the, why am I blanking on Steve Rogers that he had to deal with and like, he fought completely against it. And now like Sam has to walk within these lines of the Accords. So I think that definitely could have been highlighted more with that argument too, and like reflecting on his aspect of being a hero. But no, I agree. I think Falcon and the Winter Soldier like hit a lot of emotional beats for his character and Bucky's and just the journey of Captain America, where this is just definitely like sometimes feel like filler where they could have took another step to like add this story on.
Let's move on to our scores or ratings. And the way we score things here is on the script coverage scale. There is pass when we think a movie is not that great. There's consider when we think it's decent. And recommend when we think it's a great movie. As a reminder, this is not a this is not a recommendation, it's just a score. So with that said, how would you score Captain America Brave New World?
I would score it as consider. I don't think it's something that's terrible at all, but I do see it needs it needs some work. But there's potential in this story where it definitely, if it had like getting a rewrite, really fleshing out some things, it could have been a great espionage story and really hook us for a political thriller. So I definitely say consider it.
Yeah, I'm gonna give it a week consider. I I enjoyed their attempts to do something a little bit different. Again, I like some of the camera movement, I like some of the score, but then it's like the other stuff, like the pacing, honestly, the action didn't really work for me either. And it just felt like a huge missed opportunity. Um, because of that, it is a bit of a weak consider for me. It's not the absolute worst movie, but I didn't think it was all that great either. Um, so, actually, what would you recommend to someone who likes this movie or movies that are similar?
Ooh. What would I recommend? Well, definitely, if we're going to MCU, I would say Captain America and the Winter Soldier. I think that's a great film if you want that kind of edge, mistrust, and action combat.
I'm actually going to recommend Bodyguard. It's it's a series on, I believe it's streaming on Netflix, but I want to say originally it was BBC, and it stars Richard Madden, who played Robb Stark in Game of Thrones, and I think it's similar where he has to be a bodyguard for a politician who is a little bit controversial. I mean, there's a reason why people wanna kill her. Uh, and it brings up some of his own moral dilemmas, and I think it's very interesting. Um, Other than maybe the very ending, and when I mean the very ending, I mean like the last like 4 or 5 minutes of the show.
Oh, wow.
I think not a fan of, but other than that, I thought it's a great show.
I just have to add that to my list.
Yeah, it's super short too. I want to say it's like 6 episode limited
Oh, perfect.
series.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Did you think of it, or should we move on?
No, we can move on. I'm like,
All right. So what else have you been watching?
what have I been watching? I end up rewatching The Penguin. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
I
I
love
haven't
the Penguin.
Love The Penguin. I got stuck in there for a good second. Just Colin Farrell, 10
Yeah.
out of 10. Just
Uh-huh.
great. Um, I've also been rewatching Succession. I'm in a lot of rewatch phase.
Oh yeah,
I mean,
Succession
like,
is great.
great. Just loving the dialogue, the drama, the banter back and forth. So I'm really just trying to get back to like getting into a character's voice with like my own writing. So that's been very helpful. And I haven't started yet, but I'm excited to start the new season of Invincible. So
Oh, I haven't seen that yet. Also,
yeah.
I kind of forgot that it came out. It's just a bunch of stuff. Is
Yeah,
that
I
like,
kind of get to the phase where I'm like, I want a few episodes to come in so I have something to watch and
yeah.
not like be done.
Uh-huh. Um, yeah, I've been watching, or I actually finished watching Cobra Kai, the
Nice.
it's part 3 of season 6. These are the final episodes. I gotta go into a little bit of spoilers while talking about this because this season it's completely off the rails. I mean, this is
Oh,
a show
wow.
about high schoolers who do karate, and 2 major characters die in a yacht explosion. And
That like so that's how we're going out. Like last season.
I think the best part is they have that scene, the yacht explodes. It's a massive yacht too. There's a huge explosion in like off like the beach somewhere in LA.
Okay.
And then the very next scene, it's people on the beach in LA and nobody talks. So nobody ever brings it up ever again during the season. And I love it. I mean, I think I think it kind of sticks the landing perfectly. There's a bunch of like moments in it, but there you move on as quickly as the show does.
I think what's funny is like how they say before you didn't know why a character died, and it's just like, oh no, but like now it's like, so what project did you get?
Yeah.
So why did you go? Why'd you go out like this?
All right. With that said, yeah. Before we head out, is there anything you like to plug?
Do I have anything to plug? Currently, not yet, but I am in the works of a comic book.
Oh,
So
awesome.
please stay in tune for that. It is a vampire fantasy. So excited about that.
Uh,
Yeah, but my main plug, I'm just happy to be on the show and thank you for having me.
thank you so much for being here. All right. Thank you so much for watching or listening to this episode of Pages Pixels. I'm Rohan,
And I'm Jaya Armstead.
and we'll see you next week. Thank you.